Hello, everyone. Alex here. In today's video, we're diving into an absolutely incredible story that shows how a grieving widow's discovery of her late husband's secret changed not just her life, but countless others. Trust me, the ending of this one will leave you speechless. Picture this. Sarah Matthews stood in her husband David's office, designer heels clicking against hardwood floors as she surveyed what remained of their life together. 6 months after his sudden death, she was still bitter about the modest lifestyle he'd insisted upon despite his executive position. Now, facing mounting bills and desperate to maintain her social status, she'd resolved to sell his beloved antique desk, the last piece of furniture from his father. But what she found hidden inside that desk would force her to question everything she thought she knew about her husband, their marriage, and, ultimately, herself. The stack of letters and mysterious key she discovered weren't just secrets. They were the first pieces of a puzzle that would reveal a truth so shocking. It would make her previous concerns about luxury cars and country club memberships seem embarrassingly small. As she held the first letter with trembling hands, Sarah had no idea she was about to uncover a legacy of kindness that would challenge her entire worldview. And the amount of money involved? Let's just say it was enough to fulfill every materialistic dream she'd ever had, but its true purpose would teach her something far more valuable than wealth could ever buy. What happens next will show you how one man's silent mission of generosity collided with his wife's ambitions, and the extraordinary choice she would have to make once she discovered the truth. Sarah had spent the morning sorting through David's belongings, her frustration growing with each outdated suit and practical purchase she found. Even his office screamed sensible restraint. No expensive artwork or premium furnishings, just well-worn furniture and endless books. The only piece worth anything was his grandfather's mahogany desk, and she'd finally convinced herself to sell it. "Sorry, David," she muttered, running her fingers along the worn wood, "but your practicality is what got us here. I can't even show my face at the club anymore." Her wedding ring caught the afternoon light, and for a moment she remembered his protests when she'd insisted on upgrading from the modest one he'd originally given her. "We could use that money for," he'd started to say, but she'd cut him off. Now she wished she'd let him finish that sentence. As she cleared the desk's surface, her hand brushed against something unusual, a slight irregularity in the wood that shouldn't have been there. Pressing it released a soft click, and a hidden panel sprang loose. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. Inside lay a stack of letters yellowed with age and a small brass key tied with a faded ribbon. But it was the bank statement on top that made her gasp. The numbers couldn't be right. If they were... "Mom," Emma's voice called from downstairs, "can I get a new iPad like Jessica has? Mine's so old." Sarah quickly stuffed the papers back into the compartment. Her daughter's timing was eerily perfect. She'd just been calculating how to afford that iPad without dipping into their dwindling savings. But these papers... If what she'd glimpsed was true, affording new devices should have been the least of their concerns. She glanced at David's photo on the wall, his kind eyes seeming to hold a secret she was only beginning to uncover. "What were you hiding from me?" she whispered. What Sarah didn't realize was that opening that compartment wouldn't just reveal her husband's secret. It would unravel everything she thought she knew about wealth, worth, and what truly matters in life. And the first letter she was about to read, it would shake her perfectly maintained world to its core. With Emma settled in front of the TV downstairs, Sarah returned to the office, her hands trembling as she retrieved the papers from the hidden compartment. The bank statement she'd glimpsed earlier made her sink into David's old leather chair. 7 figures. The number burned into her mind, making her designer handbag suddenly feel cheap and meaningless. "How?" she whispered, scanning the document. "All this time. All those years of David insisting they live modestly, of her resenting their simple home while her friends renovated their mansions, of feeling embarrassed at charity galas in last season's dress. They could have afforded everything she'd ever wanted, and more." Her manicured fingers found the first letter, dated 3 years ago. The paper was thick, expensive, but the handwriting was unfamiliar. Dear Mr. Matthews, I don't know how to begin thanking you. When my husband died in Afghanistan, I thought my daughter's dreams of college were over. The anonymous deposit covering her full tuition. I cried for hours. You've given Emily a future her father died protecting. I know you want to remain anonymous, but please know that somewhere out there, a soldier's daughter is becoming a doctor because of you. Forever grateful, Rebecca Wilson. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. The second letter told a similar story. Another military family, another act of anonymous generosity, then a third, and a fourth. She remembered now. 3 years ago, David had suggested downsizing to a smaller house. She'd thrown a fit, accusing him of sabotaging their social status. Some things are more important, he'd said quietly. She'd thought he was being sanctimonious. Now, those words took on a whole new meaning. The brass key caught her eye again. A small tag attached to it read, Wells Fargo, Box 274. More secrets waiting to be uncovered. But before she could process this revelation, her phone buzzed. A text from Jessica's mother about the upcoming country club gala. Don't forget, it's $1,000 per plate this year. Black tie, of course. The Andersons are flying in their decorator from Paris. Sarah stared at the message, then back at the letters in her hand. For the first time in her life, the thought of another lavish party made her feel strangely empty. What she would find in that safety deposit box would force her to make a choice, one that would define not just her future, but her entire understanding of what legacy truly means. And David? He had known his wife better than she knew herself. The truth behind why he'd kept the secret from her would break her heart in ways she never expected. The safety deposit box key felt heavy in Sarah's hand as she pulled into the Wells Fargo parking lot the next morning. She'd spent a sleepless night reading through more letters, each one revealing another family her husband had helped. The designer purse on her passenger seat, the one she'd fought with David about last Christmas, now seemed to mock her. Inside the bank, a manager led her to a private room. Mrs. Matthews, he said warmly, your husband was always very discreet about this box. He'd visit every month like clockwork. Every month. Sarah's mind raced. How had she never noticed? The box contained more than she expected. A leather-bound journal, USB drives, another stack of letters. But it was the manila envelope on top that caught her eye first. For Sarah was written in David's familiar handwriting. Her hands shook as she opened it. Dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, it means you've discovered my secret. I've tried writing this letter 100 times, explaining why I kept this from you. The truth is, I was afraid, not of what you'd think of me, but of what this money might do to us. Remember when we first met? You were volunteering at that veterans shelter, serving meals. That's when I fell in love with you. Not just your beauty, but your heart. You cared about making a difference. But I watched over the years as our growing success changed things. The parties, the social climbing, the constant need for more. I saw how easily money could corrupt the purest intentions. I couldn't bear to watch it destroy what made me fall in love with you in the first place. The recording on the first USB drive is for Emma. The others contain everything about the foundation I've set up. Last year's bonus alone could have bought that beach house you wanted, but instead, it put 3 soldiers' kids through college. I know you're angry with me right now. You have every right to be. But before you decide what to do next, I need you to listen to something. Sarah wiped her eyes, pulling out her laptop. The first video file was labeled Emma's 16th birthday. Her breath caught. That was still 8 years away. David's face filled the screen, healthy and smiling, clearly recorded before his heart condition took him. Hi, sweetheart, he began. If you're watching this, it means 2 things. I'm not there for your 16th birthday, and your mom has finally found what I've been working on. The rest of his words blurred as tears filled Sarah's eyes, but it was his next sentence that would change everything. I've left everything in your mother's control, Emma. She has a choice to make, and her decision will show you more about life's true worth than any lesson I could teach. Sarah's phone buzzed again. Another text about the gala's seating arrangements, but she barely noticed it. Her attention was fixed on the second USB drive, labeled with a single word that would force her to confront the person she'd become. Truth. If you are enjoying the story so far, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. It costs you nothing, but for us, especially in these early days, it means the world. Let's continue with what happens next. Sarah sat frozen in the bank's private room, David's face still paused on her laptop screen. Her perfectly manicured nails drummed against the leather journal, a nervous habit she'd always hated. But nothing about this moment felt controlled or perfect. She clicked the second drive, labeled Truth. Sarah, David's voice filled the small room. I know you're wondering about the money, about why I never told you. The truth is, I almost did, multiple times. But then... The video cut to footage she recognized, their argument at last year's Christmas party. She watched herself, champagne in hand, loudly complaining about their embarrassing Honda while their friends drove luxury cars. The look on David's face in the background made her stomach turn. That night, David's voice continued over the footage, I had planned to tell you everything. About the foundation, the families we were helping. I had the papers in my briefcase, but watching you. Sarah remembered what came next. She'd spent $5,000 on a handbag the following day, just to prove she could. David had said nothing, just gave her that sad smile she'd always resented. The video changed to show a different scene, one she didn't recognize. David was at what looked like a small graduation ceremony. A young woman in a cap and gown was hugging him, crying. The timestamp showed it was just 2 weeks before his death. This is Emily Wilson, David's voice explained, the daughter of the first soldier we helped. She just graduated medical school, top of her class. She's going to save lives, Sarah, and she never knew it was us behind her scholarship. That's the beauty of it. Helping without recognition, giving without praise. More footage followed. More families. More lives changed. All while she'd been hosting dinner parties and complaining about their modest lifestyle. Then the video cut back to David's face, and his expression made her heart stop. I'm leaving you a choice, Sarah. In the blue folder, you'll find documents for the foundation. It's worth millions now, enough to fund hundreds more scholarships to help countless families. Or... He paused, his eyes seeming to look right through her. Or you can dissolve it. Take the money, buy the beach house, the cars, everything you've always wanted. I won't judge you for it, but before you decide... The screen split to show dozens of faces, children graduating, parents crying with relief, families rebuilding their lives. Ask yourself what true wealth looks like, what real legacy means. The video ended, but David's final words hung in the air like a challenge. Sarah reached for the blue folder with trembling hands, but before she could open it, her phone lit up with another notification. Urgent. Gala seating chart needs approval. The Andersons requesting main table placement. Reputation at stake. Sarah stared at the message, then at the folder in her hands. The choice David had left her wasn't just about money. It was about who she truly was, and more importantly, who she wanted to be. But what she would find in that blue folder would test her in ways she never expected. Because David had left her one final surprise, one that would force her to reveal her decision not just to herself, but to the entire world. The blue folder contained page after page of financial records, each one telling a story that made Sarah's materialistic worries seem increasingly trivial. David had built something extraordinary, a foundation that had grown far beyond helping just military families. There were scholarships for underprivileged students, medical assistance programs, housing support. Her hands trembled as she read the names. Families she'd walked past at charity galas, never knowing they were beneficiaries of her own husband's secret generosity. She remembered looking down on some of them, judging their off-the-rack clothing while wearing dresses that could have funded another student's education. A loose paper slipped from the folder, a handwritten note from just days before David's death. Dearest Sarah, if you're reading this part, you've seen what we've built. I say we because even though you didn't know it, every time you accepted living below our means, you were helping make this possible. Every vacation we didn't take, every luxury car we didn't buy, it all went here. But here's what you don't know yet. Next month's charity gala, the one you're so worried about, our foundation is its biggest anonymous donor." Sarah's breath caught. She'd been obsessing over that gala for weeks, pestering David about upgrading their table placement, never realizing. The note continued. "I've arranged for the foundation's work to be revealed at the gala. If you're reading this after I'm gone, you have a choice to make. You can either announce yourself as the foundation's new head, continuing our work, or you can remain anonymous and use the money as you see fit. The announcement is scheduled, but only you have the power to step forward. Think carefully, Sarah. This isn't about what I want anymore. It's about who you want to be. All my love, David." Sarah's phone buzzed again. Another message about the gala, this time with a photo attached. Her friends showing off their new designer gowns. She stared at their smiling faces, remembering how desperately she'd wanted to belong among them. Then her eyes fell on a different photo, one tucked into the foundation's files. A group of students, graduating with medical degrees, engineering certificates, law diplomas, all made possible by David's quiet generosity. Their smiles weren't about status or appearance. They were about achievement, about lives transformed. She picked up her phone to respond to the gala message, but her fingers hesitated over the keys. In 3 days, the foundation's work would be revealed to everyone in their social circle. Her next moves would determine whether she'd be known as the shallow widow who dismantled her husband's legacy for material gain, or— The thought was interrupted by a knock on the door. The bank manager entered with an envelope. "Mrs. Matthews, this was meant to be delivered to you today. Specific instructions from Mr. Matthews." Inside was a single photo that would make her decision both crystal clear and infinitely more complicated. The photo in the envelope made Sarah sink back into her chair. It was from their first date, she and David serving meals at the veterans' shelter. She was laughing, hair pulled back messily, wearing a stained apron as she handed out soup. No designer clothes, no carefully curated image, just pure joy in helping others. On the back, David had written, "This is the woman I fell in love with. She's still in there, Sarah. I believe in her." Emma's face flashed in her mind. What example was she setting for their daughter? All these years of teaching her that status and appearances mattered most, while David had been silently showing her something far more valuable. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was Jessica herself. "Sarah, emergency! The Andersons just ordered custom Gucci for the gala. We need to go shopping now. Your credibility is at stake." Sarah stared at the message, then at the photo in her hand. Credibility. The word hit differently now. What kind of credibility really mattered? The kind that came from wearing the right clothes, or the kind that came from changing lives? She began packing up the foundation documents, her mind racing. The gala was in 3 days. David had arranged for everything to be revealed. The years of anonymous giving, the lives changed, the millions dedicated to helping others. Her social circle would learn the truth one way or another. But as she reached for the last folder, something else fell out. A sealed envelope with today's date written on it, and beneath it, words that made her heart stop. For Sarah, the final test. Inside was a letter that would not only challenge everything she thought she wanted, but would force her to make her decision in the most public way possible. Because David, knowing his wife's greatest weakness, had designed a moment that would reveal her true character to everyone she'd spent years trying to impress. My dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, you've discovered everything. Our foundation, its impact, and the choice before you. But there's one final piece to this puzzle. At the gala, before the foundation's work is revealed, you're scheduled to give a speech. You'll stand before everyone we know, all those people whose approval you've sought for so long. The speech topic? What true wealth means. This was my last act as foundation chairman. Everyone expects the widow of David Matthews to talk about resilience, about coping with loss. They don't know you'll be standing there knowing about the millions at your disposal. What you say in that moment, it's your choice, completely. You can announce your decision to continue the foundation's work, or you can keep our wealth a secret. no one would blame a widow for keeping her husband's money. But there's something else you should know. Sarah's breath caught as she read the next lines. Her phone buzzed again, more messages about designer dresses and seating arrangements, but she couldn't tear her eyes from David's words. I've arranged for some special guests to attend. Emily Wilson will be there. So will Thomas Chen, whose father died in Iraq. Remember the Rodriguez family, who lost their home in the fire? They'll be at table 7. In fact, Sarah, take a look at the guest list I've attached. Every third name is someone our foundation has helped. People you've seen at past events and dismissed as not our kind. They don't know you're connected to their anonymous benefactor, but they will all be there, watching, when you decide who you really are. The letter slipped from Sarah's fingers as reality crashed over her. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about facing the person she'd become in front of everyone, both the elite social circle she'd tried so hard to impress and the families whose lives David had quietly transformed. But the final paragraph of David's letter would reveal one last twist, one that would make her upcoming speech the most important moment of her life. The last paragraph of David's letter made Sarah's world spin. P.S. One final thing, my love. The Foundation's work hasn't gone completely unnoticed. Time magazine is sending a reporter to cover the revelation of our anonymous giving. They're planning a feature story, The Secret Millionaire's Widow, Legacy of Love or Lost Opportunity. They'll be watching your speech too. Whatever you decide, it won't just be our social circle talking about it, it will be the whole country. I know this seems cruel, but I needed your choice to be real. No hiding, no middle ground. You'll either choose the life of appearance we've been living, or you'll embrace the deeper purpose we could have shared. Emma will be watching too. Show her who her mother really is. All my love, always David. Sarah sat in her parked car outside their home, the modest house she'd complained about for years, clutching the letter. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across their small front lawn. Emma was inside, probably still doing homework, unaware that her mother's entire world had just shifted on its axis. Her phone had been buzzing non-stop. Jessica had sent another text. Found the perfect dress. Only $12,000. It will show everyone you're still on top. On top of what? Sarah wondered, the thought striking her with surprising clarity. She looked at the price again. $12,000. The same amount that had put Maria Rodriguez's daughter through nursing school. The gala was tomorrow night. In less than 24 hours, she would stand at that podium, facing both worlds, the elite social circle she desperately tried to impress, and the families whose lives David had transformed, not to mention a Time magazine reporter waiting to broadcast her choice to the world. She glanced at her designer purse in the passenger seat, the one that had cost more than 3 months' worth of veteran family groceries. Inside was her pre-written speech, full of the usual platitudes about status and success. But there was also something else, a worn photograph of a younger Sarah, serving soup to veterans, her smile genuine and free from pretense. As she reached for her bag, Emma burst out of the house waving a paper excitedly. "Mom! Mom! Look what I wrote for class. The assignment was what I want to be known for." Sarah's hand froze, because what Emma was about to share would shatter any last doubts about the choice she needed to make. Sarah took Emma's essay with trembling hands. Her daughter's neat handwriting filled the page. What I Want to Be Known For by Emma Matthews. Everyone in my class wrote about being famous or rich, but I want to be known for something different. I want to be like my dad was, always helping others even when no one was watching. Last week I found his old journals in the attic. He wrote about secretly helping people but never telling anyone. He called it quiet kindness. I didn't understand why he lived so simply when his job paid well, but now I think I do. Dad wrote that true wealth isn't about what you have, but about what you give. I didn't tell Mom about finding the journals because I know she's sad about not having fancy things like my friends' moms. But I'd rather have Dad's kind of wealth than all the designer stuff Jessica's mom has. Sarah couldn't read anymore through her tears. All this time, Emma had known. had understood in her innocent way what Sarah had been too blind to see. Her phone buzzed again. The Time magazine reporter. "Mrs. Matthews, looking forward to your speech tomorrow. Our sources say it's quite a story about to break. Care to comment?" Sarah looked at her daughter, still waiting expectantly for her reaction to the essay. Then at their modest home, which suddenly didn't seem so inadequate anymore. The speech she'd prepared for tomorrow sat in her bag, full of empty words about social status and material success. She knew what she had to do. "Emma, honey," she said, wiping her eyes, "how would you like to help me write a different kind of speech?" As they walked into the house together, Sarah's phone lit up with one final message, this one from the gala organizer. "Reminder, your speech opens the evening. Also, several unexpected guests have RSVP'd last minute. Should we rearrange the seating?" Sarah smiled, knowing exactly who those unexpected guests were. Tomorrow night would change everything. Not just for her, but for everyone in that ballroom, because the truth she was about to reveal would test more than just her character. It would challenge everything their social circle thought they knew about wealth, worth, and what truly matters. But first, she had a letter of her own to write, one that would be read long after tomorrow's headlines faded. The grand ballroom of the Westbrook Country Club sparkled with its usual opulence. Designer gowns rustled as Cleveland's elite found their seats, champagne flutes clinked, and whispers about Sarah Matthews' brave appearance so soon after David's death filled the air. Sarah stood at the podium, her simple black dress a stark contrast to the elaborate gowns around her. Emma sat in the front row, clutching her father's journal. In the back, the Time magazine reporter leaned forward, pen poised, and scattered throughout the room, though no one knew it yet, sat dozens of families whose lives had been changed by a quiet generosity they never knew came from the man they'd seen at these very galas, year after year. Sarah's hands trembled as she unfolded her new speech, the one she and Emma had stayed up all night writing. Her eyes found Jessica's table, where her friends sat in their designer gowns, expecting to hear comfortable platitudes about loss and resilience. "Good evening," Sarah began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I'm here to talk about true wealth, but not the kind you might expect." She pulled out the photo of her younger self at the veterans shelter. "This was my first date with David. I was serving soup, wearing a stained apron, and I had never been happier. Somewhere along the way, I lost that version of myself. I became obsessed with appearances, with status, with having more." The room grew quiet as she continued. "What I didn't know was that my husband was living a double life." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "No, not that kind. David was secretly building something extraordinary." One by one, she began sharing the stories. Emily Wilson becoming a doctor, the Rodriguez family rebuilding their lives, countless soldiers' children getting an education. With each revelation, heads turned as people recognized faces in the crowd. "My husband left me a choice," Sarah said, her voice growing stronger, "to either continue his legacy or to take the millions he'd accumulated and live the life of luxury I'd always wanted." She paused, pulling out David's last letter. "He knew this moment would define not just my choice, but who I truly am. So, tonight, I'm announcing that the Matthews Foundation will not only continue, it's doubling its commitment." Gasps filled the room as she continued. "I'm selling our vacation home, my designer wardrobe, everything I thought I needed to prove my worth. Every penny will go to helping more families, creating more stories like the ones you've heard tonight." Sarah looked directly at her stunned friends. "I don't need your approval anymore. I don't need to prove anything. True wealth isn't in our bank accounts or our social status. It's in the lives we touch, the help we give, and the legacy we leave." She turned to Emma, who was beaming with pride. "My daughter's essay asked what she wants to be known for. Tonight, I'm showing her my answer." The silence that filled the ballroom was broken by a single person standing, Emily Wilson, tears streaming down her face. Then another stood, and another. Soon the room was filled with standing families, all touched by David's quiet generosity. The Time magazine reporter was scribbling furiously. But Sarah didn't care about tomorrow's headlines. Her eyes were fixed on Emma, who held up her father's journal with a smile that said everything. Later that night, Sarah added her own entry to David's journal. "My love, you were right. True wealth isn't what we have, it's who we become. Thank you for believing that the woman you fell in love with was still here. She is, and she's just getting started. My friend, sometimes the most powerful transformations come when we face the person we've become and choose to be someone better." Sarah's journey from a status-obsessed widow to a woman carrying forward her husband's legacy of kindness reminds us that true wealth isn't in our bank accounts. It's in the lives we touch. Hit that like button. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell to keep up with all our stories, and be sure to check out more emotional stories by clicking here on the end screen. This is Alex, reminding you that the greatest wealth we'll ever have is the good we do for others. See you in the next one.